Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about male loneliness question mark or failure to adjust to equality. So that's a that's a question mark I put there intentionally. Um, and so we'll be talking about the men's the lack of relationships and what men can do about that. So I wanted to do like a more direct video because I've been maybe it's hard to tell whether it's the algorithm or whether that's organically, you know, what is happening in the world in general. But it seems like I'm seeing more and more and more, uh, you know, in both in newer movies, in newer media, in newer YouTube video, in more YouTube videos from more uh, creators, and then also in all kind of spaces, in just offline or non social media spaces, just like family, friends, people around physically in the vicinity. Um, and this is it's a topic that a lot of people have already, of course, talked about frequently. I was like watching some bigger, I don't know what they call it now, the left tube. I haven't really kept up with all of that that world. I don't know how big that world is, but it's definitely a world. The YouTube viewership seems to be it's a fairer first worlder and millennial to Gen X era, is the major audience more so than not. The younger generations, a lot more of them on streaming, TikTok, other sites. It seems like, but I think the male loneliness demographic, if I had to like just on like the cursory research and like what I gather, it's most hitting the 30s, 40s, 50s age group, but especially like the 30s to 40s. It's a lot of the millennials and Gen X. It affects all, but it affects all age groups. But um, it's definitely a thing that is it's just like it's hard to know, right? Because everybody's YouTube algorithm is tailored to them, and if I go like on a different, if I go on a different, device, if I go on my phone and I browse what's happening, I get like very different. So I'll get fem targeted things actually at different on different devices because, well, fun fact, I'm a non-binary person. Well, long story. I'll come to that later. But let's get more to the point. So the reason why I wanted to make it is because to kind of like directly address those topics without having to do my usual circular you know uh let's do film criticism of this particular movie, or let's and then actually not talk about that. I just wanted to kind of directly address it, because there's just so many people. It's just everywhere, right? And even if you're not a man, or if you're not a woman or non-binary person, right, or if you're not a non-man, that doesn't mean that this doesn't affect you. Obviously, it does, right? Just by the it's kind of one of the things about it is like, if you just turn on, if I just type this in, you're gonna see this is everywhere, right? Male loneliness epidemic, right? This is from just a couple of months ago. Substack, that's CNN, right? It's men's health is male loneliness. Why men are susceptible to severe um why men are susceptible to severe loneliness. It's everywhere, right? Happiness. I mean, like obviously there are other things that are everywhere. Like obviously a certain a certain genocide is everywhere right now. But like this has been like a long trend coming, especially in like um, well, it's really everywhere, but especially in the Western world, certainly. Especially in the richer world, I would say even more so for a lot of reasons. Um, is there really a male? Is there really a male loneliness epidemic? Yes, the U.S. is on Reddit. Reddit is like prime time for male loneliness, right? Because Reddit is white Western dude nerd site. How men can come out of the loneliness epidemic. Feeling lonely or isolated is more common for men. And so like it's everywhere. It really is. And you know, I do think it is worth addressing directly because obviously I'm not the first person to bring this up. I know I'm not like. There's lots of other videos. There was a in the left tube space there was a Thought Slime video recently about this. It was a response to a shoe on head. I don't know the YouTube bread world dramas very well. I don't know the back and forth of all of that, but I do know that it's a hot topic everywhere. So it's like I was just watching this movie called Bit, which is LGBTQ plus. Here's a movie shout out. If you show up to the Silver Spook stream just for the movie shout outs, Bit is a queer vampire movie with a trans main character, and it has like trans and lesbian interracial relationship within the first 15 minutes. But it's about the same topic as well though, where like there's this group of I'll throw it up on the screen for a second. A gang of all women vampires have a one rule: no turning and no having sex with men, because men can't handle the power. It's a queer feminist vampire movie, and it also deals with that problem. And then there are men in the movie, right? But they're all like men's rights activists frothing at the mouth. The vampire hunters trying to kill the women who have got the power, or they've got some power, and they basically bite the necks of horrible, toxic, abusive dudes who cheat and beat their girlfriends and are just terrible people. But the vampire hunters are trying to take the power back. There's the Craft movie, right? The new Craft movie where David Duchovny plays the leader of the men who want to take the power back from the women who have stolen it, because the world is right when men are in charge of everything, right? And so like but he's like the bad guy in that, right? And so it's like this movie it has a very similar cast. It's a very similar kind of setup, but with witches instead of vampires. There you go. There's the two movies. If in case you just show up to Silver Spook so you can figure out what you're gonna watch this weekend, there you go. I gave it to you. Also, what's up, Victor, and everybody else? So, but yeah, coming back to the male loneliness. So it's everywhere. It's in entertainment. It's in, content creators are talking about it. It's in YouTube videos. It's in, obviously all over social media all the time. It's in your DMs. It's in your group chats, right? Oh my God, this dude, what, Holly was just sharing this story of this woman who has like, she was planning a get together with her friend, who also has a daughter and, some other friends, but most of them are all women, right? It was a Friendsgiving, right? Friendsgiving. Anybody have Friendsgiving, right? Obviously, happy Makahiki, because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Hawaii. We have our own harvest here, but Friendsgiving it's the movie, but it's also a real thing, right? Where people get together. Is a blend of friends and Thanksgiving. It's a large meal eaten with friends either on or near Thanksgiving. Why is it Friendsgiving, right? Well, part of the Friendsgiving is because some people don't necessarily want to get together with their families, right? That's also another change of culture that is part of on top of like changing lots of things, but I don't want to go too out. I don't want to scope too far out. If you want the Silver Spook take on Thanksgiving specifically, I just did a Silver Spook video, Indigenous Thanksgiving, which was the most recent video, and you can see that on in the video section of this channel. But yeah, we just did Indigenous thing. So if you want to see the Silver Spook thing. Also, yeah. So I'm not I've socialized as male, but I'm not technically. I understand men, having been socialized, but that's not exactly what I am. But if you want to see Indigenous Thanksgiving from the perspective of Indigenous Hawaiian, Mi'kmaq or Micmac, and Métis / Anishinaabe people, then this is that video for you. But that's not the topic right now. But the thing, the Friendsgiving that people are having is part of people wanting to share the space, right? People wanting to share space, but they don't necessarily want to be with their family. But also, they're thinking, who am I going to get my social time with, right? How will I not be alone? Well, I don't really, I don't want to be in the big fight with my mom and my dad about, they're still really Catholic and they don't approve of my lesbian relationship I'm in. I don't want to be in a fight with my cousin and my uncle who are like, all we're going to do is yell and scream about how they're pro-Israel and I have to, stop being a terrorist supporter. I don't want to fight with that. I don't want to fight with my dad about whether we Native Hawaiians were colonized. I don't like talking about that. My dad, he'll often pick fights about that stuff. Or he just likes getting into arguments because he's brainwashed by empire to be a liberal white man despite being an Asian Pacific Islander. But anyways, so people don't want to go to Thanksgiving with their family for lots of reasons, right? And so people are deciding to do Friendsgivings, right? At the beginning, people everywhere book plane tickets and hopefully while they're wearing masks, taking proper precautions, social distancing, eating outside, having proper ventilation to prevent aerosolized mass disabling, mass killing airborne AIDS from spreading and increasing the mass disablement and mass death. But anyways, in November, many choose to reunite with relatives for Thanksgiving. But for those who can't or who don't want to, Friendsgiving is a popular thing. Officially is the I was added in 2020. But people choose not to host it before legit Turkey Day if they spend Thanksgiving traveling home to be with family. Some people do it and then they also do Thanksgiving. Others will just co-opt the true Thanksgiving and call it Friendsgiving if they're celebrating with a group of pals. Anyways, but you know what that is. I don't need to explain that to you. But when people are deciding, like Holly was sharing this story about this person who was bringing again their daughter, and themselves, their daughter, and like a few other but they're all basically women or non-men friends, right? And then this lady asked. She was like, well, maybe we'll invite some guys, because she knew guys from work, right? She knew some men in the area that were, might be alone. And so why don't we help these men, get some social time, right? Have some social connections, like have some sharing some space with other humans, right? Not being lonely, right? So she texted, and Holly I'm sure has the link to the actual Holly has that link. Maybe I'll just run and grab that, So this is you can go look, you can check that out in the chat there. The actual link that I'm talking about. And it's it's pretty, it's pretty, unfortunately it's very sad. Where am I gonna get this? Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how my own YouTube channel works. Okay, there we go. So this is the actual thread. Let's look at it. Okay, I invited 3 men to Friendsgiving, not because I'm interested in them, but because I thought they should not be alone and feel some fondness for each of them. I mean, this legitimately, this is a woman or a non-man trying to help men not be lonely. People are trying to help men. Sometimes bending over backwards, trying really hard. right? Um, pictured are the pictured are the results. The final outcome is the women will be dining alone today. Okay, so here we go. So she texts this man, and the man says, "Is Tracy gonna be there?" No, she will be with her brother. Linda, Sue, and Charlotte will be there, and me. Without Tracy, not much interest. Okay, Tracy's a hot bitch. This is this is still in, fuck effing saying. So so that's okay. There's one man that's I don't care about going places unless I'm going to try to have sex with somebody. And this particular person, okay, that's number one. Number two, this is man number two. Okay, I was going to ask you if you had plans tomorrow. If not, you are always welcome here at our Thanksgiving. Okay, man number two says, don't know if I want to chance it with the truck. Supposed to take it on Tuesday. Maybe we can get together after I get it fixed. If you want to come over, I can give you some gas money. Okay, if you want to come to dinner, I can come get you. Man, that's a lot of driving for food. Okay. I mean, so she even offered to pick the guy up, but maybe we can get together after I get it fixed if you want to come over. So the guy's saying basically, no. Have a good Thanksgiving. Have a good Thanksgiving. Are you doing anything? I'm cooking. Turkey, potato stuffing, the whole thing. I was going to invite you out. Well, you are welcome here. BYOB is all. We are entertaining. Who is we are entertaining? You finally find a man? No, Linda, Gloria, Sue, and Linda's daughter, Charlotte. Female energy through the roof. Could use some male energy. Yeah, I'm not going to read this because this is really gross, but yeah, I bet you could. I wouldn't know what to do with all that something around me at once. Okay, so this is the response, and these are men that apparently this person feels fondness for. So maybe the fondness quotient has slightly decreased after that, but these are not just some random, right? It's kind of like but and this is like, all the men that I know, which I'll talk more the more personal part later. But this is like pretty standard for a lot of men, unfortunately. Like from all the ones that I know, for the most part, with certain exceptions. But I would say the exceptions, they're really the minority, and that's not good. It's not like that's just the truth though. If you are a man, if you because when you have to, even men have to, like, if you are somebody who's not trying, if you're trying to not be like that, you have to go out of your way to find other ones, that are like not like that. I mean, I'm speaking, I even have like long time friends that I was friends with for a long time, and I'm like, I don't want to be around those people anymore. A lot of people, I mean, I'm a game dev, I'm gonna make video games. I don't want to be around most of the people I used to make video games with, and it really is. I don't like that. It sucks. It makes it hard for me to find friends to talk to. But this is reality. And so, but part of the point of this is that we talk about male loneliness, and all of the, obviously the corporate media is over here going, oh my God, we have to just solve these problems, and several years ago, another stay-at-home dad reached out to me after reading my work about being a stay-at-home dad. Most men won't, but fatherhood was taking a toll on his mental health and self-worth. He felt alone, but not because he didn't have a good relationship with his significant other. He told me it was because he didn't have friends. Men can't find the friendships that help them through ups and downs of life, and the way many women do. I also experienced what has been called male loneliness epidemic, and many dads tell me it has reached into fatherhood. There's no one to talk to. I walk into a place that is crowded, and it's like I don't even exist. But anyways, so there's a lot of talk about the male loneliness, and then it's like, well, we can, some people, when people try to help with that problem, right? The men, it's frequently either like, this event isn't go the way that I want it to, right? Like basically what the first guy is saying, right, when he's not being really gross, is like I only go out to things unless if it's gonna, well, let's take the second guy first. I'm not gonna go out to things unless it feels like it's gonna be perfectly the right way. I mean, and what is the right way? Well, I'm gonna drive there with my truck is fixed, and you're not gonna pick me up. Part of this is like, there's a whole thing. There's many layers to why the men have the problem, right? That they have. One of them is like they have to feel like they are paying for the things. Like Holly just told me, like in Italy, they have two separate menus, right? So when you're going to order your pasta or your fettuccine or your wine or whatever you're ordering in an Italian restaurant in Italy, there's a menu for the men, and then there's a separate menu for the women. The men's menu has the prices, but the women's menu has no prices because women are expected to never have to pay for anything. So they have two identical menus, but one minus the prices, right? That's so much extra money you got to spend and waste of paper to print all that out. But they do that because of how gendered certainly Western culture and patriarchal culture is, right? And so the men are, and that obviously, but that's everywhere where the men are, in a Western toxic gender role norm, the man is expected to have the money to pay for everything, to be the quote unquote provider, right? I mean, we know that, everybody knows this, right? Everybody simultaneously cringes or applauds it, one or the other, but everybody knows that is the Western male cultural norm. And so even if the guy doesn't say that, that's kind of what he's, that's one layer probably. He's going, well, if I'm going to drink my, I don't want you to go out of your, I don't want you to do extra, and so this is a guy kind of saying like, I want to be the guy doing everything and in charge, and like I will drive there with my functioning good working truck that is all fixed up, or and it has to go that way, or I'm not going to do it. As a man, I'm not going to do things with people. I'm not going to date a woman if she has making more money than me, right? I mean, that's just for the dating thing. If I'm going to date a woman, I'm not going to date a woman if she has a better job than me, if she has like a nicer house than me, if I got to stay at her house, if I have to use her car, I'm not going to. No, there's some men who will be like, well, I'll just take advantage of whatever woman. I just want a mommy that I can have sex with. I mean, that's some men, and that's also, right? But that's also, for some men, it's like, I want to be the provider, period, and I'm in charge of this relationship. I make more money. I have the power relationship. A lot of women like, well, I don't know if I want that. Or some men are like, well, I just want a mommy and I want to have sex with, and I want to watch video games. I want to play video games and watch porn all day, and I want mommy to cook me Hot Pockets and bring my Mountain Dew while I do nothing all day, right? And that's also like, women are like, well, I don't really want to do that. I'm an adult and I want an adult relationship. Can we have an equal relationship, right? So, but if men don't get one of those two things, right? And often it's very specific versions of those things. They're like, no, I don't want to do that, right? So if you just reject, but it's kind of like, dudes, you don't have infinite selection, I'm sorry that you spent the last 30, 40 years of your life, being the male protagonist, power fantasy, reward receiver for sitting, having great achievements like killing dragons and killing God and fighting cosmic beasts in RPGs for the last 50 years of your life, and then jacking off between that and thinking that like you're gonna have great success and a relationship, a meaningful romantic and sexual relationship with other people, with such little effort. And let's be real, that's what it is. And also, that world is all catered to you. It's if corporations are selling you a product, right? So, but like that's, the world is filled with people now that are not going to, they're over that. They don't want to prepare. I remember being like 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, playing video games all Saturday, Sunday. I remember the girlfriends just kind of like talking to each other, going like, one of these guys is going to stop playing video games for 18 hours straight, right? When are they going to stop playing this Warcraft or this, Resident Evil? I was just playing Resident Evil, it's like I could, looking back at it, I was like, wow, this pattern was already being built in as a millennial. Because if you're a millennial in particular, you aged through the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation, right? It was everything was kind of targeted to your age as the outgrowth of video games and the digital experience, and now the online, um, mass bombardment of media, movies, the streaming, and the video games and all that culture. You went through all of that, and so you've been socialized in a really weird way. I mean, you don't have to be that kind of man. You could be just a Gen X man that doesn't play video games. You could just be, it's less so, but still so, right? You could be a Gen Z person who just, went down the Minecraft to fascist pipeline rabbit hole, and now you don't know how to talk to people except in like weird 1488 memes, or you just think really wrong things, right? But whatever it is, it's like people in the world, and obviously the non-men, like women and non-binary people, and etc. They don't want to, they're like, most of them are not willing to enter into a relationship if they're not actually going to be treated as an equal, not as either like the step, like a subservient, right, 1950s style, trad wife that cooks and cleans and does whatever the master man of the household says, or be treated as, they're the not dummy mommy, but some people do that. That's valid as well. But treat it as like a new mom that you can also have sex with, that does all the work and you do nothing, right? Like neither of those. But most men, like, unfortunately, it seems like most people who identify as men, I think, kind of are looking for one of those two things, even if they don't say it out loud. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm all for feminism," But then when it comes to it, right, what their actions are, what their actions and what their words when they interact with women, right, is saying what this guy is saying. I just want to have sex. I don't care about relationships. I don't want to have I just want to have sex with the women I want to have sex with. I don't, it's kind of like, how are you expecting to not to actually socialize, right, and not be alone if you're like talking to a woman. And the thing is, like, I think a lot of men don't realize is, like, when you're talking to a woman, you're just like, when you talk about women to other women, or you talk about women in general, right, like they're objects, that doesn't, in the past, maybe again, right, maybe in the past when when patriarchy was more solid, which is falling apart now, right? That's part of what I'm going to be talking about as well, right? Which is that equality is happening whether the men want it or not, in the way like many things around the world are changing, whether the unjust power wants it or not, right? And so women didn't have an option to leave the men because financially the men had all of the power in the relationship, and they could hold that over their head, right? You were held hostage you could be held hostage by men and by a society that was all catered towards men. But now that women can make, they're able to stand on their own 2 feet, more often than not, they're like, have better jobs, they have a higher average college attainment, and they'd also just not willing to put up with the men anymore, even if they're not making like tons and tons and tons of money, and they're not, right, but they're just like not willing to put up for a whole confluence of reasons with that. So then when you say things like this, immediately this is going to go around, and the women who have options now, right, women can be with other women, women can be with non-binary people, women can be with women or trans women. And the thing is, right, with trans women, because we'll come back to that, but it's like some men will say, well, if you one of these guys implies, right, oh, did you finally find someone, right? Did you finally find a man, right? So this guy is expecting that, like, the women have to find a man, because obviously the only goal in life of women is to marry a eligible bachelor, find Prince Charming or whatever, right? And it's probably me, right? But meaning that man. But the reality is, women don't actually need men, to continue the species. In fact, and there are non-men who have reproductive organs that can, in fact, trans women is like by all reports they are very highly sought out because a trans woman doesn't have not on average, it doesn't have the level of horrible behaviors, expectations, and is just a much better partner for women for all the reasons that we're talking about, right? And so the women are not waiting for men to change. It's not a thing. If we accept that there is a male loneliness epidemic or whatever, right? Like CNN and all these other sites are telling us, right? The male loneliness epidemic will not end because women get so lonely because women are simply not getting married and women are not having long-term relationships. Women suffering the lack of men is not going to happen. That's very important for men to understand. Women are not going to finally see the errors of their ways like 10 years from now. Like, that's because I see that all the time. I don't watch Joe Rogan. I don't listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't tune into Jordan Peterson when he's not completely out of his mind on his third rehab, snorting coke and then doing right-wing propaganda and being a corrupt so-called therapist or whatever his former job was. He also has a PhD from Canada, so I don't know what kind of crackerjack box degrees they give out in the West. But anyways, I don't tune into Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. But like what those groups are constantly arguing is the women are going to see the errors of the ways. The women are going to come around. The women are going to be so lonely when the millennial and the Gen Z women, they turn 50, right, 40, 50, and they're still alone. They're going to come crying back to us. They're going to come crying back to us because then they'll have finally realized that what they really needed was a man to, kill the mammoths and, shoot the evil invading, brown and black people from the rest of the world and keep their community safe. And they'll need that man to provide and give them the big dick that they need. Pro tip, like having a giant dick is not a good thing. I know that's like, as somebody socialized as male, that's everywhere, right? Every dick enlargement spam, all the corporate man-directed porn industry that's all about selling dick enlargements. It's the same thing as, right, making women insecure about their weight and having super thin, rail thin supermodels in the 90s is about selling diet pills. It's about making money, right? So showing giant dicks like going into paid actresses. These are porn actresses with like completely fabricated bodies. It's also to sell expensive plastic surgeries, right, to the universal death care and universal Eurocentric gross plastic surgery industry, high paid doctor racket. That's what the Western health system is. But anyways, so in the same way that like, there was to sell expensive surgeries and breast enlargement pills and so the giant dick it's not just about like this is a normal situation that it's just because some porn directors in Hollywood just had a big dick thing. No, it's like to sell insecure men. It was the propaganda in the same way that like, the Nero testimony or weapons of mass destruction was about selling a war to the world, to the West and justifying the think of what happened to the Palestinians, but the genocide of 1 million Iraqis, which is like, imagine those 6,000 dead children. Imagine hundreds of thousands in Iraq, right? And so, but in the same way that the propaganda to sell war, the propaganda to sell cigarettes, right? So similarly, the propaganda that like you have to have a giant dick and you have to have this right deodorant and you have to have this right shirt, otherwise nobody's gonna fuck you, nobody's gonna have sex with you, nobody's gonna date you, nobody's gonna like you. That's like decades of that male targeted propaganda, right? It's in my brain because it's just that was what the TVs and the junk mail folder algorithms targeted me as. Every day I still get like three, grow to 12 inches, get a horse penis. Um, pro tip though, like 90+% of women, that's not what the average woman, that's not what they don't want to feel pain. Imagine if women were sold this idea that, getting mini thorns installed in your vagina, that's like what men really want, because that's what it is. It's pain, right? Now some people, like, there's some people in the S&M, in a consensual way, with their whips and their ball gags and their riding crops and their cats of nine tails, or whatever else they want to use, they can do in a safe word enabled space. They do certain pain, but like in general, people are not just like, what I want to do today when I sit down on my chair, I want to put like razors on it so that I cut my buttocks. You ever think about that? What if I had a gaming chair that when I went to sit down and play Call of Colonialism, I saw Call of Duty, and you sat down on your gaming chair, I wish I had razors in my chair, so every time I sat down, I sliced open my gluteus maximus. I just want to bleed all over my chair. That's not what people want, right? Women don't want to feel pain anytime a penis goes in. In the same way, if women all had thorns, like little plastic or little metal thorns installed inside of their body, because that would make a man feel pain. Like vagina dentata, but like maybe like not quite that extreme. But it's just some pain so that your dick gets stabbed. Does it? I don't think. Would you? No man would. What? Right? I mean, most men are not going to go for that. Boy, I don't want to be feeling pain, because that wouldn't feel good. I would be too busy thinking about how much it hurts, and I probably couldn't keep it up. If a woman put little plastic, trademark, decrease your man's erection by 3 inches when he feels so much pain that the blood stops flowing through the Capernaum cavernosa or whatever organs you have down there. So but that's part of the male propaganda. That's another reason why men are lonely, because they think that that's what women want, and they go, well, I gotta get, So there's a whole discussion on the social media that was like, if a woman, right? I don't know if Holly has that one, but if a woman tells you that your average, yeah. So here you go. If a woman tells you that you're the perfect size for her, it's men interpret that as bad, right? So this is another reason why men, this does directly relate. This is why men are lonely, and there's a good reason for it. Because people who wanted to make a lot of money selling pills, right? Drug runners with sex characteristics make a lot of money making you think your dick is too small. A woman tells you you're the perfect size. Here's an example of how porn has truly rotted men's brains. A woman tells you you're the perfect size, meaning the experience is 100% enjoyable for her, and your first thought is to think about other men's size and compare them to yourself. So if you tell a man he's a perfect size, it doesn't hurt you, and they'd be so upset. Leave it to other people being penetrated and take their word for it. Definitely porn's fault at how society treats people's bodies over the sexualizes stuff. I just pray for everybody. All be safe. And there are mountains of replies of dudes, so she had to like block and hide like a lot of them, sure. That are saying like, no, that's lies, blah 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 blah. Watch these videos of men who are abnormally huge in size, and the women are acting. That's acting. It's kind of like watching an Israeli woman in a staged fake hospital situation crying, claiming that Hamas blew up the Tel Aviv hospital or something. This ridiculous propaganda. It's called acting. It's like the Naira testimony. What lied you into the Gulf War, right? So the women, like Naira, I mean, it's not backing an entire genocide like the U.S. is doing and the West is doing. But when a woman, Naira, the rest of testimony, when a woman cries, a paid actress cries on screen saying that they're throwing the babies out of the incubators, right? Unlike the actual Palestinian kids that are dying, being thrown out of the incubators, or having the incubators shut off by Israel. But when they do that acting, it justifies something else, right? Which is we have to save them by going in and doing this war, right? And so similarly, when a woman is acting, right? Oh, I love it when it's it's kind of the opposite, right? Instead of crying, she's like acting like she loves it, but it actually hurts, right? So that acting that the porn industry has been doing for decades and decades and decades, right, is makes it seem like they love it, but they don't. So then when dudes will go into sex and they're going, well, I have to make it bigger, otherwise, it's not going to be good, right? Because that's what I've been watching this my entire life, right? The porn is making you insecure, not your girl saying you're perfect for. And there's so many dudes in all these replies. They're going like, they're like, the other one, there's way more like this in the actual in this one. Yeah, it's either women going, my boyfriend is too big, I don't want this, and then it's just like, and she had to like block a lot of people, like she said. But anyways, but the important thing is that like the important takeaway is that this is not necessarily the core of why men are lonely, but this is one of the things, is that there's been a lot of lies that have been put out there that men believe. And there's also this wouldn't work if the men also didn't have a kind of weird disrespect for the women, and like going, if a woman tells you, like, let's say you were propagandized, but a woman tells you, hey, I actually don't like to be hurt, right? And also like, if a woman says like that's the perfect size, and that's like that, and then you're saying that's too, if she explains, well, I know you think that, but that's acting in porn and that's not real. If you as the man still don't believe her, you say, well, you're lying to me, right? Then that's another layer of, you don't trust women, you don't listen to women, right? That's a patriarchal toxic masculine trait that's going, well, whatever you're saying, woman, that's nonsense, because obviously my education on Pornhub and Bang Bus or whatever else you have watched, that tells me everything I need to know about sex. Me and Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan and the definitely has no ulterior motives penis enlargement industry, like, it's like saying, well, the tobacco company told me smoking was fine, woman, so of course it's fine. I know what I'm talking about, because I listened to the Marlboro Man, right? But it's kind of like, if you just, if people thought about that a little bit, and also maybe like respected other people, like respected women, and didn't, and just go like, when she says that, just don't make her like go quiet and not talk to you for a long time, because you've already lost at that point, right? That's another thing. If women, if they're still like trying to interface with you, even though they're having a hard time, you haven't completely lost them. But if a woman is just like, stop talking and is passive, it is like, then that means she's, you're on the road out, from that relationship. And if you continually just like override and bulldoze whatever she's saying, then that's another reason why you're lonely. So but so those are some of the sub myths that have to be dispelled, that like and I mean it's like, I'm not saying that this is because you're bad because you believe that, because I mean that's stuff that even I've said stuff like that because that's what everybody said. All the kids in all my high school friends, and the dudes around, and like everything that you're told, right? Mostly not in public, it's mostly in private when you're in the porn or in the junk mail folder, or just browsing with your targeted ads for men, right, is telling you have to make your dick bigger or do all these things, and that's going to be awesome. And then women are going to love that, right? I just was watching some random YouTube video, and I got a YouTube video ad that's like, you need to grow your dick at least to 8 inches. Women will never tell you this. It was a paid woman actress, right, was speaking on this ad going, I know that women will never tell you this. They're always just, trying to, keep your ego intact, or they're just being nice, but they actually want it to be 9 or 10 inches. And this is the secret. So to this day, that's still the advertising going on, right? In the same way that, like, to this day, there's lots of horrible capitalist propaganda and all kind of horrible other toxic propaganda that's being pushed out, right? And that's just one of them. And then that's part of the loneliness. So it's really like, but of course, we can't, expecting millionaires, billionaires, and capitalists completely corrupt psychopaths to take responsibility for male loneliness is, it's like asking the United States and NATO to take responsibility for global genocides, climate change, all the wars and the mass failures on COVID-19. But that doesn't mean that you can't personally, right? You can't personally, and also collectively, as men, as a collective, take actions against that and not continue this pattern, right? And not try to not succumb to the propaganda, right? So anyways, so what's some other things that cause male loneliness? So I mean, just more personal stories. So like when I was younger, I was socialized as a male, right? I was a boy, and I was told that you're I was just, there wasn't never a question about it. Now, as a native Hawaiian in indigenous Hawaiian culture, and just if you want more on that, I have an entire more just specifically about that. So let me see if I can find one. I mean, nowadays sometimes I look more like that, which is I don't gender. I'm a Mahu is a native Hawaiian gender identity. It's similar to trans and it's similar to non-binary, but it's not any of those things because it's not a Western gender identity. It predates the existence of the homophobic, transphobic, LGBTQ plus culture that has been fomented for so many centuries there. And but anyways, and so but I never, this is stuff that I had to kind of come to later in life. And if you want more specifically on how Native Hawaiians we deal with gender and gender roles in our culture, I have this thread here, and you could read that if you want to read that. But when I was younger, that was not a thing that was in my life. I was just a boy, and then I was a man. Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, with all the gross F slurs and the R slurs being said by fellow grade schoolers. It was in all the 90s movies. It was in the Clerks. It was in the the joke was on the trans woman in Ace Ventura. Every it was that this toxic culture was everywhere. Sadly, along with the you have to have a giant dick culture to sell surgeries and pills, and and bogus women and men beauty standards and attractiveness standards, right? And but it was a real it's a real toxic culture. And but I was kind of a weirdo. I was definitely ostracized from a lot of the groups for multiple reasons: for being big, for being brown. They were a race, and they were fatphobic. Aspects to why I was ostracized in that early age. I was never fully out in that time, but I was also like, I always had problems with the male culture when. I had friends who would be driving down the street at the beach and they'd be catcalling and like, oh yeah, I want to have sex with this and that and that. And I was like, that never sat well with me, but it's kind of like, I didn't really know what was happening at the time. But I just remember, I play football in the locker room. They'd all be talking all kind of the grossest things you can imagine. Right. When you play football, the coaches would insult you, be like, oh, you are a woman. Are you a, F slur? Are you a, you little girly something? Right. And there's all this anti-women misogynistic language, and right, all those coaches and all the men went home to wives for the most part, right? Now all those wives were in unequal, a lot of it unhappy relationships, right? But again, they were held hostage, right? The adults in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s and the noughties, the adult men, on average would had a wife or girlfriend. But the women that were never really happy there, right? And so they were kind of pushing that, obviously, like for so many decades and centuries, have been pushing that to their kids, And but I remember like thinking like this is really I never was happy with that the whole time. Um, in my 20s, I was a computer programmer. I started working. I got a degree in computer programming, and I started working at like I worked at some game companies, which is full of a lot of. There's actually a lot of actual otaku because they're actual Japanese, super anime and video game obsessed nerds, and that had its own kind of um, its own Asian inflected version of that culture, specifically Japanese. Well, the Japanese and a lot of them diaspora, but it was a weird culture because it's all these men making video games with all of these models of a big titty waifu, Dead or Alive or Street Fighter, or figurines all around, and it was kind of like there's something kind of icky about this. I mean, I know this culture because porn and video games and movies and just being in a little man cave. It was that was a lot of millennial dude and a millennial nerd dude culture, right? And then having your anime wife here, and then you're having your nowadays they have entire animatronic blow up dolls. I don't know what they got nowadays. They got you got your kitsune waifu body pillow. You got your AI girlfriend, right? You plug your AI girlfriend into your animatronic, 5'4", kitsune waifu body pillow, and then you got your whole fake girlfriend there, and then Shuan heads over there like sweating bullets. How are we gonna get all of the trad? Why? How are we gonna have a traditional? How are we gonna have a traditional American Christian man husband and American atheist man husband and American, libertarian atheist man husband and Asian wife, or American Christian white man husband and American Christian white woman wife? How are we gonna have our traditional relationship if I can have my blow up chat GPT dialogue powered vocal synth powered sky? She can go into my Skyrim mod and then come back out and she'd be here. And anyway, I'm just, I don't know what they have now. I know not everybody can afford such things, but like long story short, like there was a a gaming and then nerd culture, and there's obviously non-gaming and non-nerd toxic culture too at the same time. That was in the football locker room, right? These are all horrible ideology, life ways, sex ways, or let's say lack of sex ways. Let's call it like long-term chronic dry spell ways, and then you become incel. And it's not funny, I know, but like, and then I remember being like, I don't really like being in this room with 15 other men trying to make more power fantasy games, right? Some of them have girlfriends, but the girlfriends mostly talk to each other. They don't really talk to the boyfriends. I see, and a lot of those guys, not all of them are Japanese. I mean, it's in Hawaii. So it's hard to explain Hawaii to a lot of Westerners, but it's not just Japanese. There's whites, and then there were Pacific Islander, and all kind of people. But it's a universal thing, though. Weebs, there's weebs, and then there were people, but there was like, it was again, it's a world in which everything revolves around in your man cave, right? If you want beer, you have a beer fridge, mini fridge in your man cave with your posters of your girlfriends, right? Where your mommy brings you your food, or your girlfriend brings you your food, right? And what you do is you maybe with other men or maybe alone, right? Go into your virtual world, whatever your fantasy video game or your Call of Duty or whatever one you like. If you're on a massively online multiplayer video game like a military simulator, then it's just like you just yelling slurs and killing brown people, getting ready to go do that in Palestine, or do it in Iraq or Afghanistan, and that has its own gross elements. But all that is toxic masculine culture, right? And and that's not really a community. That's a man, that's you alone with your screen, with your porn, right? In the world that you want to live in, right? Temporarily next to other dudes who are simultaneously getting off on their own mass violence fantasies, killing the dragons, right? Like getting to level 100 and going into space and making more money than God, or doing whatever, killing God, or you know level, I don't know, whatever you do in those, Grand Theft Auto, like having horrible violent sex with women and just running around and shooting innocent people. I mean, all of that is just toxic. People who have played all the boys get together, play Grand Theft Auto, and then all the girlfriends, if there are any girlfriends, right? Now there's not that many girlfriends, right? But at one point there were all these. You'd have like 15 to 20, 15 to 25-year-old men get together, or like a few men get together, play Grand Theft Auto. All the women would be doing something else, and they all be like really embarrassed, right? If the girlfriends or the moms or the wives saw them playing it, because they knew what was on the screen was gross. Some of them don't know, but I mean, anyone with this idea that's like, oh, these are the things that men do, and we don't let the women see these things because, well, that's just not a, it's just like, that's not, girls just, girls don't, whatever. If there's stuff that's like, this is the stuff that men do and the women can't see that, you've already gone into like a toxic world. You've already kind of lost the plot there, right? And that world can only be perpetuated as long as a disproportionate amount of the wealth and the money and the power in society is going to you and your men buddies, But now that that's not the case, you can't just expect to hold your girlfriend or your wife hostage by making all the money, controlling the bank account, and saying, well, you can't leave me because if you leave me, you'll be homeless. Or you can leave me and then only chance is you can get together with another powerful man, and also it'll look so bad on you because patriarchy means that a woman who divorces her husband is a fallen woman. So that was always the threat. That's the only thing that kept the women around this entire time. Whether that was in the 50s, the Stepford Wives, whether that was in the 70s and the 80s, the 90s and 90s with the girl. When you were over there playing, jerking off and then playing Call of Duty all day and not talking to your girlfriend, and then just like going off and doing what you want to do, and then expecting to come home and have sex and have the food ready. That was always a hostage situation. That's like the slave going, it's not, I mean, I don't want to belittle slavery, but I mean, it's like going like, hey, you're going to pick this tobacco, and then you're going to pick this cotton, and I'm going to take that, and you're going to do that. And the slave doesn't have an option, because in a system of the racialized capitalism, system of slavery, and then slavery is like the optimal form of capitalism. You can't leave that, or you can't leave that setup in a similar way. Like if you live in a capitalist society like in the West, then you can't, if you leave your Starbucks, right, then you're going to go to get another job at McDonald's. Well, if you leave that Starbucks, you can leave that Starbucks, but you're only with a boss who's exploiting your labor and taking 90% of your labor value, sticking it in his capitalist pocket, right, and having a crappy boss that treats you badly and makes you show up, makes you deal with horrible customers that want to punch you in the face for wearing a N95 and taking proper precautions. But if you leave that abusive business relationship, right, between you and your boss and the corporation that's exploiting you, you can leave, but you're going to go work for another, in a capitalist society, you're going to have a hard time finding an actual job that isn't one, right? And now obviously that's not a thing that everybody has now, but what in the it's that's actually why like a lot of the changes that are being led, in a lot of the Western capitalist society, they're actually being led in the romantic, in the relationship domain, right? In the men and women relationship domain. That's where a lot of the biggest changes are happening. They're not talked about, but it's really like, and that's why I kind of made this a question mark. Like, is it male loneliness, or is society just healing itself, and some men are failing to adjust to a new, actually equal society? And I would actually argue that's the second thing, right? Like, it doesn't make it good that there are men who don't have close friends, right? It doesn't make it like, I'm not like happy that there are millions of guys who are committing, they're unaliving themselves and they're joining, these other horrible groups, and they're not having sex, and they're not having friends, and they're not, able to have families, or their wives are leaving them and then marrying a trans woman or just a woman rather than be a woman rather than being with a man. It's not necessarily like good. Loneliness isn't good. Loneliness is, humans are social animals. They need social. It does cause suffering if you are alone. I know this myself. So it's not good, but it's also like it's going to be painful. It's going to be a process. It's going and it's the women are not going to go. Women are not and should not be expected to go back to the unjust, immoral relationship, right, that they've had for the last centuries, certainly in the Western world and some outside of it, but definitely in the United States and in the Western countries. Women are not and should not be expected to go back to that, right? The burden of responsibility, the burden is on the men to adjust their behavior, to adjust their expectations, to adjust their reality. We have a particular case that we have recently dealt with around, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It's just somebody that I was friends with for a long time. I don't know if they're, if they're gonna, be a different person, but it's not the responsibility of Holly and I, who are both non-men, to fix that person or any other person. We will carry on our lives. Holly as a cis woman and me as a non-binary / trans Mahu person. We will carry on our lives. We will have a good relationship and romantic, sexual, friendship, talking, having, and our children. We will have a full life with 0 men involved. Women will have other women. Women will have just a group of friends. There are many different setups nowadays, right? You have a woman and just single, sometimes single mom, but a lot of times not. A woman and just like even if she's not a lesbian, just living with another woman, cohabitating, right? Maybe several women together, right? Women maybe with like some family and some friends living together, raising kids, right? Women and non-binary person, women and a trans woman, or two trans women, or whatever it is, right? You can get, you to make children, all you need is a sperm. There is, I know Israeli is sticking cattle prods up butts of dead soldiers to get some of the sperm. I mean, that's like, it's like a weird eugenics program to make more fascist soldiers for the empire's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East. That's Israel. But anyway, long story short, there's ways to get the male human gamete sperm. It doesn't require a lot of men around. In crack, it requires 0 if you have trans women. You don't need any. You don't need any men. So, things are not going to change back. Things are not going to. There's some men that hope that, hope falsely. Here's another one. I want to bring this up. They hope falsely that things will transform back into the 1950s or the 1850s or the 1650s. Like Return of Kings. Right? I remember part of Neofeud was inspired by this guy named, I talked about him on a recent stream for like 3 hours. Him and the Dark Enlightenment people. These are like male nerd dudes around the time of the Milo Yiannopoulos and the Steve Bannon. These are like male dude nerds who went on white Western dude nerd internet. It's called Reddit, and they were posting very logical arguments about why we should return to monarchism and feudalism under male rule as it was in the before the French Revolution, and that would be that's the savoring of society, right? It's very much the feminism is cancer kind of ideology kind of dovetails with that. And I remember and there are people who would hope that, obviously, right, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, the conservative, like the obviously the big chunks of what's called conservative is just about returning to you know, even more barbaric, horrific, patriarchal, um, patriarchal, hyper-conservative, anti-LGBTQ plus Western culture, whatever that means, Christian conservatism, all this, and so all that kind of, that this, and there's those people who want to return to that, right? RETVRN. There's people who want to go back to, just the 50s. There's people who want to have like, they think that we'll come out of this and women will find out, but the thing is, it's not going to happen. Let me just put it that way. Here's something else that, an interesting thing that Holly shared with me is that, even outside of the West, right? It's not a thing that's just in the Western, European and Euro settler, colonial or Euro visitor world. There have been gender inequalities in multiple cultures in different times, right? And but one of these interesting things, I just want to share this because it's really interesting. I gotta try to get this all in a way I can share it. And then give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so even outside of Western culture, right? China, which is of course the leading country in the world, leading the multipolar, coming post-colonial and hopefully post-capitalist, but decreasingly Western imperialist world. But in China, here's something interesting. When a man supports traditional gender roles, and disagrees with gender equality, he is said to have Jinan I, the straight man cancer. So even there, I mean, like, things are shifting there, and China is actually ahead of the United States. China has gender affirming care for trans people there. They have like very affordable, cheap estrogen. You can buy it as easy as buying like candy at the drugstore or at the 7-Eleven. They have the top shows in China are in fact the queer soap operas, like C dramas, where there are often two men, two very feminine men often are like some of the most popular shows there. And that's not like a lot of this is not even a brand new thing. Is that the gender in Asian and East Asian culture is different in the same way that's why I don't call myself a just to, in shorthand I'll say trans or I'll say non-binary, because the gender trans in the sense that the gender I identify now as is not what I was assigned as at birth, right? And then also, but gender fluid, because obviously I change expression to change the way in which my gender is expressed on depending on the day and the time of day. And also non-binary in the sense that it's not a male or male or female, man or woman, he or she gender. But all of those concepts are actually Western themselves. So it's anyway. And so in China they have their own conceptions of what are gender, and not just like gay and trans. A fun fact in both this kind of comes back to that the LGBTQ plus thing, right? So fun fact in Hawaiian language, since I'm talking, this is a little dovetail. He, she, and it are all the same gender neutral pronoun, o ia, and this is also true of every Austronesian language. This is like fun fact. There are more Pacific Island people like Hawaiians and Samoans than all of the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain combined. So actually, so actually, there are more of the world has no gendered pronouns than has, actually, if you count, because not just Hawaii, it's actually very large Asian countries like China. They actually have a universal pronoun too. Anyways, so that's in Filipino, in Filipino, in Bahasa, in Indonesia. Indonesia is 100 huge. It's like Philippines is 100 million people. Indonesia is 200 plus million people, and they have a single pronoun. Anyway, and so that's how they view gender, and also the gender roles are also historically viewed differently. Now, colonization has changed that, but not entirely. And indigenous people we are recapturing our culture, including these these gender roles, including and these the equality of gender and also the acceptance of gender fluidity, right, is also being recaptured, right? That is also jeopardizing, right? That is also jeopardizing the patriarchal dominance of certainly the Western world, and that doesn't cause male loneliness, right? But men who fail to adapt to that new reality will tend to be more alone, and that's self-inflicted, you know. And so, but I thought it's interesting. So that so there are some toxic gender roles that still exist outside, but those are also like being addressed as like, well, that's if you think that you know, if you're a Chinese man and you think that gender equality is not good, then you are just, well, you're one of those men who has the straight man cancer. You know, it's like, so, you know, if you listen to too much Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, maybe you have the straight man cancer. Yakshinan I, you know. I call it, so I call it Western culture is cancer. You know, it consumes all resources and it brings it with its tendrils into the tumor that is the imperial metropole, and it grows infinitely, unstoppably until the entire body dies. Right? It's like, it's actually, you know, a very apt description. And so similarly, a patriarchy is about sucking the energy from one gender, right, women, right, or more than one, depending on how you look at it, into the other, right. And taking the autonomy, the agency, and the labor of the women, is cooking and cleaning, into the male gender for their own personal benefit, right? It's patriarchy is, you know, it's cross gender profiteering, you know, it's capitalism between the sexes, you know. You know, it's an unjust hierarchy. So anyway, and so forget where I dovetail from that, but let me close this out. But anyway, so coming back to the story I was talking about growing up. So, you know, I was socialized in this way for a long time, but I always saw problems with it whether that was in my work culture in my early 20s, working at game companies, when I was in my, you know, and that's like a lot of nerd culture, gaming culture, weeb culture, right? Whether that was when I was in my teens in the locker rooms, right, which is not necessarily nerd culture, in the football teams, in the basketball teams, like, this is gross, right? Just driving down the street, like on Saturday, catcalling, I'm like, this is kind of like, I don't know, this is not good. You know, and even in the movies, like, you're just watching movies, but, you know, it's kind of like, you're kind of like, I don't know, should we be saying all these R slurs? I mean, maybe, you know, I don't know if this is the best thing, especially if you had like a disabled person around. See, I feel like people always, at least somewhere in the back of their mind, they knew it, right? Because if their mom heard them saying a thing, or if their family heard them saying a thing or doing a thing, right, you'd be like, oh shit, right? Or like, if you had like a person in a wheelchair and you were calling each other like the R slur, because that was something we were like, oh, we did all kind of gross things, right? Because they said that word in every movie. It's like in all the movies, you know. It's like in we're watching Lawnmower Man. It's like they use that word. It's not even in the back. They're just like, oh yeah, he's one of those people. But we're gonna make him smarter with this supercomputer. We're gonna put a Johnny Mnemonic, you know, cybertrodes in his brain and make him a genius, right? We're gonna jack him full of drugs, and he won't be an R slur anymore, right? So the ableist language it was just everywhere. You know, it's just everywhere. And then people also use it, like, you know, all the time. Kids were using it all the time. What, Pen 15 is a show that's like not even as bad as it was, and it's horrible. And so, like, you know, but you always kind of, you know, you would, if you said that around somebody who was really disabled, you'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said it right then. So, but that just kind of, the Western culture is just sick, and it kind of knows it a little bit. Israelis don't really get it. I think, like, I don't know, maybe they're so far gone. They think that just like coming on screen and, like, you know, like making fun of dead babies, and, you know, like, you know, like, you know, taking a murdered, you know, young betrothed fiance's like locket off of her dead body and giving it to your girlfriend. That's a cool thing. Like, you just blew up a wedding and then took the wedding jewelry off of the bride and the groom, and you think that that's like a cool, awesome thing to do. So I don't know. Maybe they don't too far gone. But anyway, I don't know. That's kind of another topic. But whatever it is, it's like, you know, whether people understood how terrible and how misogynistic the 90s and the 80s, 90s, noughties were, that, you know, that they definitely are. If you don't know it, you will be informed. Nowadays, you will be informed of it sooner or later. And, you know, people who try to, quote unquote, not be canceled, people complain about being canceled or not able to do their comedy anymore. You know, the people, you know, upset about the political censorship and the woke SJW, whatever, who get a Netflix original series still, and are still making podcasts every day, right? They're still making money, a lot of these people. Although apparently Kyle Rittenhouse's podcast didn't turn out too well. Well, screw him. And apparently, Derek Chauvin, I heard, is not doing too well in prison. I don't know how his podcast is going. But he is also a murderer and a U.S. police officer, like so many other ones. But you know, the thing is that, like, you know, all of that behavior, whatever you know, whatever the Western society is like trying to justify, trying to say, well, you know, men just can't help it. Boys will be boys, you know, or we're just joking, you know, like that stuff has never been acceptable, you know, and like people just have to, accept that. Well, now right, it's very similar to the United States, right? I don't keep dovetailing off of this, but, you know, 6,000 Palestinian children have been killed in hospitals, babies blown up, taken off incubators, shot, children sniped in another school from an Israeli stationed in a blown up school in Gaza, right? And the whole world is like, you know, he's like there are blockades, there's all these mass actions, there's millions of people in cities across the world, right? 1 million Iraqis were killed, you know, countless uncounted children in Iraq in the noughties, right? And there was no action for that, you know. The U.S. has been committing ongoing, and the West, all NATO, European countries, all of the U.S. vassals, Japan, all these countries, they've all been committing ongoing war crimes since the UN was established, you know. There just hasn't been. The U.S. and Korea, the U.S. and Vietnam, millions and millions. Imagine the number of children that have been killed just in Vietnam. If there was a TikTok, if there were phones and there was social media and Instagram and TikTok like there was today, maybe Vietnam would never have happened, because the first 5,000 Vietnamese children were burned to death by napalm into rice paddies, and all the Vietnamese could film that and put it to the world. Maybe it would have ended by now, right? So my point is that, like, similar to the Me Too movement and Me Too and women just like standing up for themselves, right? And a lot of it is social media going, well, we're going to put you on blast. We're going to call you out, right? We're going to call out those, you know, Marvel actors who are pro-Israel. And we're going to call out all of these crappy Weinsteins. We're going to call out Johnny Depp. We're going to call, and all the, you know, and now we have more power to do that. Some of that social media, some of that's just the shift in global patriarchal dynamics into a more equal reality. Some of that's a global shift of the colonized and a capitalist colonized world against the colonized people and people on a more socialist or less imperialist path, right? So and part of that, and so right, and so but in the same way that, like, the war crimes in Korea, the mass murder, a genocidal war against millions of Koreans. Imagine Gaza times 2 million. That's Korean War. They bombed the entire country till there's nothing left to bomb. Think of how many children died. Okay? Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, the Gulf, Iraq 1, Iraq 2, right? Every one of those wars was bigger than what we saw in the last month and a half. Right? Has the United States and the West ever been called to the mat for those crimes? Have everyone in power, generals, presidents, senators, corporate heads, making money, bankers, benefiting from these wars, have they gone to prison? Have they been you know, have they lost their head or been hung till dead, you know, in The Hague, right, by the so-called international court? No, right? But now what's happening now, people are a little bit worried that maybe because the West isn't in total control, and there isn't not a unipolar barbarian gangster, colonial capitalist Western world running the show. Maybe some American and Europeans might actually go to prison or die for their complicity in war crimes, including Joe Biden, and including the head of the EU, including obviously the Israelis, Netanyahu, right? But you see how that global that at the highest scale, right? At the global economic, political, geopolitical scale, there has been no justice in the world, right? But that's starting to really shift. And the women, and actually, if you look at countries that have had great progress out of the horrible oppression of colonialism, right? Whether that was Libya, whether that was Cuba, which has equality for women and they're actually equal representation in parliament, in their government right now. Libya had Gaddafi was when they tried to Clinton bombed them back into the Stone Age and put slave markets in Libya with the help of NATO and France. Libya, that's another genocide. Where was all the screaming for Libya when bigger than Gaza happened in Libya? Think of how many children died there. Right? I'm not saying that Gaza is small. It's massive and horrific and disgusting, and it has to stop. But it's not the first. The U.S. is doing Gaza all over the world all the time. Europe is doing that all over the world all day long. That's all they do. And so, but in the Libya, there was a push for gender equality. Before the U.S. was involved in Afghanistan, women's rights were on the rise among the Muslim country of Afghanistan, the so-called backward, anti-feminist, right? Muslims are just horrible, barbaric. They behead and they oppress women. Afghanistan had better women's rights. It was on the path to better women's rights than America and Europe. The United States funded the far right in Afghanistan, the Mujahideen, and later they funded obviously Al Qaeda. They funded the far right in order to cause massive problems in Afghanistan, and then they blamed them for the problems that they installed there. But the reality is that where gender equality starts to make progress is oftentimes the places that are actually healing also the economic dimensions, the other social dimensions, environmental dimensions of their societies. And so really patriarchy and the colonial capitalist structure, those other structures all are deeply intertwined. And so in fact, you can look at that as the male loneliness, which is really the equalization of the equalization of gender in the United States and in the West, because not just the U.S., it's the UK, it's other European countries that are having this problem too, and Canada, right? So the male loneliness. If CNN and the BBC and the Guardian and Yahoo News and the Western man on social media and the YouTubers are all reporting male loneliness, that actually could be a positive thing. Not because it's good for men to be lonely, but it suggests that there is actual equality is being restored. Because obviously, when apartheid in South Africa was nearing it, when apartheid in South Africa was being jeopardized, right? The pro-apartheid whites, right, like Elon Musk's family, our favorite emerald diapered baby, that also works to back global empire and genocide, and but when apartheid was jeopardized, the whites were incredibly upset. They were saying, "What will happen to all of the whites of South Africa?" Think of the lonely South African white person. Think of how hard it will be. Think of how when we genocide, how much we will suffer, right? That's what they said, right? Israel saying, think of how many Israelis, look at the poor Israelis when Al-Aqsa flood happened, and now this Pittsburgh man has to, he can no longer live in his beautiful villa, his mansion, in his Israeli settlement, because he's so scared. He doesn't know how he'll recover, choosing between living in Tel Aviv or going back to his mansion in Pittsburgh, or his nice house in America or in Europe, right? Think of the Israeli loneliness. Don't worry. Don't think about the Gazan dead babies. Who cares, right? They're animals, right? But this is the way that men and the West right? This is why, right? This is why CNN, they're asking, well, what about the male loneliness? They're not asking, how about the abused women? How about the decades and centuries of unjust treatment of women, right? Think about the Israeli loneliness. Don't think about the decades and decades of siege and bombing and stealing of children and starvation of the Palestinians. Don't think about the bomb treatment facilities. Don't think about the snipers murdering the protesters all the time on the Gaza apartheid wall. Think about the sad Israeli, right? But this is similar. The male loneliness, right, is, think about the suffering of the people who actually have had the power the entire time and have been taking way too much advantage of it, right? So the fact that tide is really shifting right now for a whole variety of reasons, right? It's the new realities of the social media and the access, that the democratizing, decentralizing effect that has a positive. It has social media, no doubt, the internet, no doubt, have negative impacts too. But a positive impact is that, oh wow, now every of the millions of Gazans they have their own CNN, and people listen to the younger generation. Also, just listen to other people around the world, and they're much more savvy, and they share and they can talk, right? And everyone has their own CNN in Gaza, and the things that are actually the most morally outrageous and most important to get heard are the things that people share, and that's what's getting shared, right? Similarly, right? If a woman is being abused by a man, women can connect with other women in so many other ways. They have many other options, and they're like, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna hang around and wait to see how this turns out. The other thing is, the men are not even making any money anyway. I mean, in the 50s and the 60s, they were making money. I mean, part of that is like men. You know, I think you think about it, a lot of men didn't necessarily do that much more work in the office. Being a madman, I worked in an office, right? Part of my working life, coming back to that, was working in an office where the women and queer people, like the lead manager, who basically did all the work, like got all the timesheets out, made sure all of when there was a big event, had all the food, all the catering, all done. The women like did all the grinding, the paperwork, the accounting, the tax stuff, teaching. I was a teacher, right? I was a teacher, which is seen as women's work. Let's be real. In most of the West, with very few exceptions. And with the cooking, it seems as women work, except with the 4-star Michelin chef, who's cooking dry garbage for your Thanksgiving turkey that pretends to be good food, but that's what they cook. And if you watch The Bear or The Menu, two great shows and movies, the man's work is making the equivalent of is like man's work is like the F-35 of food, which is overpriced, under delivering dry garbage, right? And so, but coming back to teaching, right? So if teaching is not man's work, I was teaching, I mean, there are male teachers, but it's seen as lesser. It's been seen historically as lesser, and it has been paid lesser, especially during the earlier days of America, where they sent women out with very low pay, and that's part of how the teaching. The teachers' salaries have not been commensurate, and they've gone up so slowly, and so many teachers are mass quitting, and it's gotten worse under COVID, obviously. But while I was teaching, and doing like social work, but the teachers most of them were women, but also the office workers that were actually doing work were all women. The people that were doing the people that were doing the computer work, keeping the Excel spreadsheets together, like actually getting things done, mostly women. And there were men in the office, but the men in the office stood around or just hung around. One of them even admitted to me. It wasn't even a white man. It was actually like a Hawaiian and Filipino man, but it was like socialized as a white man. In the office setting, he was taking the place of like a madman white man. He said, I don't actually even know what I do here. I went to high school with the CEO of this company. And this is not even at a corporation. This is at a nonprofit. I went to the high school as this guy, and then he hired me here. And mostly what I do is I talk about football scores. We talk about the golf game that we had, and we just kind of like talk about high school, and we talk about like what party we're gonna go to. That's mostly what I do around here. And then I kind of sign off on the timesheets so that it says that there's a name. But mostly I just kind of like stand around. This guy actually told me that out loud. I, as a man, in this company as a man, I get paid $100,000 a year, mostly to stand around and be nostalgic with other men about high school, right? Also, the head of the thing was fucking the secretary. The head of the company was screwing the secretary, and he had, it was a whole, like, it's so fucking gross. And this is also in the 20 teens, so it's so gross. It's like, it's like, and he hired like young, pretty, handpicked girlfriends as his secretary. And he's like, yeah, so I hang out with this guy who's having sex with his secretary while his wife's at home, I don't know, whatever. And I just talk to him and I get paid all this money. And then the personal assistant of the director was a queer guy, right? He's a queer Asian guy. He did all like tons of work. He did like like so much work all the time, always on the phone, constantly texting and arranging everything. And then in the office, everybody who's actually doing office work, women. And then like a handful of gay men. When I was teaching, it was like there's like two, like a gay guy, this liberal hippie kid who left early, and then there was me, and then there were women. So the people that were actually doing work, right? People actually doing the work, it's like women and queer people, right? And in the 50s, that's right. The men have never been doing any work, right? They show to the office, and they have sex with whatever they want. They go to meetings where they just flap their mouth, make tons of money profiting, and then they come home. Right? And then they expect, right, when they've had sex objects at work, and then they come home and they want to have a sex object. It's called their wife. They have wives at home and they have wives at work. At work they have sex, and they have people to do all their the quote unquote menial labor. That's actual work, right? Flapping your mouth, talking about the scores, right? Moving your lips, talking about how fun you had in your vacation. That's not work. And that's those, but we all know those people. We all know the bosses. We all know the upper management. We all know the vice presidents, the clueless people who are like, hey son, you got to use AI in your programming, right? I know somebody who's like, you got to put AI in this code so that we can make these code work. So can you put AI in that code? And it's like, well, if I put AI, the chat GPT or whatever, the AI is going to generate a bunch of, mangled, C# that's not I'm gonna have to spend more time debugging it. Well, I don't know. All the other dudes that I stand around talking to who make way too much money, they're all talking about put AI, and before that it was crypto, before that it was NFTs. So hey buddy, just put that in there, okay? Can you put that AI in there? That doesn't add value. Like Elon Musk is the epitome. Elon is the ultimate Western man, right? He doesn't add any value. He subtracts value. He subtracted $40 billion of value from Twitter. He crashed it, right? He like personally made decisions to literally throw the gum in the works of the Teslas that he claimed to be the genius on. Like his micromanagement in every single company he's been in has harmed the productivity of those companies. But he's still in charge for some reason, right? Then that's patriarchy. That's right. And so, anyways, so coming back to it, so that was a lot of my life, and so I kind of realized like, oh my gosh, well, I mean, like, it took me a long time to realize, well, maybe I'm not actually, I'm certainly not what is deemed the Western male gender, and I'm not, that's not who I am, it took me a long time, like being married to Holly, and being, in that relationship to kind of figure these things out. It's not unlearning decades of toxic male ideas, unlearning ideas that even just the porn industry, like we were talking about earlier, learning ideas of just what the porn industry has installed into you. Like you have to have a big dick, and women have to look like this, and this is, the bodies have to all look like this, and your body has to be like this. Like she has to make these sounds because, all that stuff, all that crap, that's all stuff that has to be, it passively, it will generally not be unlearned. It has to kind of actively be internally dismantled. Sometimes, decolonization is not a metaphor, but like decolonizing all of that, decolonizing in the sense of removing colonial, horrible ideas, norms, even like gut instincts. They're not even necessarily like conscious thoughts. Just kind of like, well, this is what happened. No, that's really hard stuff to change, which is why it's better to change these things before they start. That's why we're making sure that the next generation, our kids don't have those problems, right? All of this horrible, toxic, Western, colonial, capitalist, patriarchal, messed up ideas about what sex is supposed to go like. Making sure that the new generation doesn't have that in them when they're being educated is so important too. But obviously, like, if you don't want to be a man, if you already have had that and you're 30 and you're 40 or you're 50 years old and you're a man, if you don't want to be alone, but you still have all that stuff, you still have to address that. I mean, you cannot address, but well, it's too hard to address it. Well, you cannot address the 30 years of toxic, horrible ideas about what your life and you as a man, your life was going to be like, and what your relationships are going to be like, what your relationships with women are going to be like, what your friendships are going to be like. You can undo and dismantle that, and that's the hard work, or you can be alone. And that's your job, though. That's your responsibility. Women cannot do that for you. It's not kind of like, well, if you could just, I'm just a broken person. Oh, I just have these problems. I'm so stuck in these ways. I just have all these problems. You have problems, and you must fix the problems. Or you can choose to not fix the problems, and then you can be alone and sad. Or you can find people that will enable your deadbeat, loser, sad boy, I want to jerk off and do no work and just be, I want everything to be a fucking video game and AI waifu bullshit, and just, whatever, you can just rot, I suppose. But like, that's, so that's, that, and that's not the message that I know a lot of people want to hear, but, that's the message. And, it took a good while, but, we eventually, by cutting off and women, obviously women and non-men don't feel obligated to help those men, right? Obviously, like this, the woman who was saying, hey, do you want to come out for Thanksgiving? I'm not saying don't invite the men, don't invite boys and men to your Thanksgiving get together. I'm not saying don't invite them to Friendsgiving, right? But it's kind of like, if you invite them and you're like, well, and if they respond to that with like being gross and being like, no, it's not going to go exactly the way I want this holiday to go. You're not going to have the turkey the way I want. We had somebody that's like, oh, the Christmas tree isn't up exactly the right way. Or even have like this dude who we show up at the thing and he'd be like, oh, you got to take me to this and you got to involve me in that. And then he would show up to events, like things that he asked to be a part of, like a Thanksgiving, a Christmas, right? Going to the beach. And he'd just be like sitting there sad the whole time and be like, why are you being weird and ridiculous? You asked to do this. And it's like, no explanation. But part of it is because that's the kind of person who has adjusted to being enabled his whole life to be a shitty, selfish brat and a loser, right? And so like continuing to enable, well, let's try and invite him to the next one. Oh, it's gonna be weird and awkward though. Let's just try. And then I started by kind of like, well, we can't just keep, making us miserable while trying to help this other person, right? If you're reaching out one time, 2 times, but if that person is continuous, like is just like saying, well, either like just making it horrible when they come, or just being like, no, I'm not gonna come unless there's some hot chicks to have sex with there, or they're saying like, I'll come, but I'm not gonna come if there's girls there. I'm not gonna come with the girls. There's too many girls there, or I'll just want to have sex with all of them. Right? If they're gonna keep doing that, then they should just, then they can just be alone. And like they, this is like Oh, we have to feel sorry for Bill Gates, because he's going to lose some money. Oh, it's so sorry that Israel is not going to be able to have free labor from 100,000 Palestinians. Oh no, the Israelis have to pick their own cabbage and tomatoes, right? No, right? Americans also have to learn how to pick their own cabbage and tomatoes and not go, oh, what will Americans do with all of the illegal immigrants being paid $3 an hour to do menial labor? It's labor. Is it need to be done? Then it's work, right? Americans have to learn how to care for the land. Yeah, it's hard work. Reforest their land, bring plural crop agriculture back to their land. All Americans, right? And it's never been right. Just like it's never been right that women have been abused. It's never been right that, Mexicans have to do all the gardening for you. Everybody should have a collective responsibility to do all that work. Oh, you have a degree. Wait, what do you have a degree in? Flapping your mouth, putting out lies like about uranium and how everything wrong with the world is China's fault. That's not work. That's flapping your mouth for blood money that you stole with bombs and war and giant corporations. It's not a job. Get out in the goddamn garden and fucking fix the earth that you killed. So, but similar for the men, like, just sitting around and making other people miserable, having sex with things, having a big dick is not talent. It's definitely not work. That's why nobody wants to have sex with you, because you think you stick your dick in a thing and everybody loves it because you have what you think is the big dick and you think that people like it. Maybe people don't like that. Maybe women have told you that they like that dick that is whatever 8 inches or whatever because they needed your money to sustain their household, or they needed to be seen with a boyfriend because their family and their church that they've now left demanded that they have a boyfriend or a husband, right? But now they don't need your giant ding dong because it hurts, it sucks, and they don't need you. They never wanted you. So get good at sex and giving women orgasms. Like non-men and trans women, they tend to be better at it, and that's why they'll have all the sex and you won't have any. So, pro tip: it doesn't, you don't need 8 to 12 inches. You don't need a dick the size of a width of a beer can to give it orgasm. It's like fingers and tongues and all kind of other things can be done. And just a pro tip. I'm just telling you. Somebody still in a relationship and not having those problems. I'm just unlike most men who take advice from single jerks and assholes like Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan. I'm not trying to brag, but I'm just saying, that's not what it's about. And I'm saying that as somebody who used to think those wrong things, as somebody used to think, oh yeah, if I just take this pill or had this surgery that made my dick bigger, that's gonna I used to think that because I know we're all being blasted with that all day. But then if you follow that, you will fail to find a girlfriend, a romance. You can find an AI girlfriend if you're, if you can have a mommy and daddy or somebody who you've gaslit somehow into, or tricked into giving you money to buy you the robot girlfriend. Maybe you can, maybe your robot girlfriend, maybe your AI fake girlfriend, maybe Chat GPT Tifa Lockhart, your Final Fantasy 7 Chat GPT power girlfriend will like it. But I tell you, actual women, it's not gonna pan out for you. And so I really hope that I could go off on this for a lot longer, but should probably cut it off soon. But it's like So if you is there anything else I've missed? Okay, so I understand, even just in general, people are lonelier because pandemic. It's been hard. Pandemic was hard because things were shut down. Women and men everyone has had to suffer that time. Things were locked down. People just have to be distanced, right? Work and play and the social spaces, there's less of them. everybody has suffered that, and now because Holly and I, we're continuing to mask, so we're not, we're still taking that real seriously. So we also, get ostracized. We're not ostracized, but we have a hard time being in social interactions because of that. So I understand like loneliness in general. It's also hard for me as a person who has had a lot of male friends to not have a lot of those friends because they think really terrible things, and I don't want to be around those kinds of people, right? Who are continuing to insist on this, right? Sexist, misogynistic ideas. And so that does make me lonelier, even like on a different level, like not wanting to constantly be in a fight with my dad about whether we're colonized or not, whether Hawaii is, stuff like that, we're not always fighting about that, but that's made it harder there. But it's also like it makes it hard. It makes it harder for even the men who have figured out that, hey, we have to like treat women and non-men as equals, like and not just like that's just when people say that, oh yeah, no, I'm a feminist. Like I say, oh no, I totally believe women should have equality. That's like, but what does it actually mean? It's in practice. It's there's so much more to undo. It will take me. It will take anyone socialized in toxic masculine culture their whole life probably to undo it, and you'll never really be fully done with it because so much of that stuff is deep ingrained. You have to constantly like question the things that you think. You'll think a thing, you not even realize you're thinking a thing. Again, some of these things are just instinctual, right? Like, oh, here comes the check, I obviously got to pay for it. Oh, we're building this room in the house, obviously I'm the man, I got to take over for that, and I got to make sure that everything goes the way. You just like overriding women's decisions because that's the man thing to do. Like maybe like, but it's like, hey, did you know actually women are doing a lot more construction now? Partly because all the men are too busy jacking off and playing video games. So, there's not like anything inherent, like there are differences between, male and female bodies, and there's a spectrum, right? And there's some differences, but there's nothing that like fundamentally makes a male person, a man person, better at any one particular thing. And many of the things that it's been like the man, the hunter, that's all a bunch of lies. Recent anthropological studies have proven, in fact, that women had always been doing hunting, and many of them were actually excelling at hunting, and men did certain like throwing, specifically throwing a spear was something that like men did disproportionately. Like they did a lot of that when hunting mammoth, but it wasn't like just men went. There's women went, and also like bow hunting was very common with women. So anyway, so a lot of that stuff about this is what the men do and this is what the women do, and so I as a man, I got to do all these things the women do, and also like the attitude of like, I'm gonna insist on this is the way that it will be done, and I'm just gonna like take over whatever the space is and make it that way, which is a non-democratic thing to do. It is a non-equal thing to do. Like that, there's those kind of things that are like they're not even really recognized. They're just unconscious. They just happen, right? They're not like, oh, I didn't have a thought that I want to make more money than women, so that means I'm a feminist. I mean, okay, fine, that's but that, but it's not just that. It's the way that all dynamics, decisions, and everything happens, right? Things about sex, things about expectations about like what people should look like, will look like, have to look like. There's so many things that you can't, and I don't have time to go into all of them. I don't even know all of them, and I'm like somebody who's been on this for some time now, and I think that people don't really so I think people don't really it's a lot of people don't acknowledge how difficult that is to get past that, but how necessary that is. And just because it's difficult, it still doesn't make it women's and non-men's responsibility. I know it's difficult. I can tell you it's difficult. It's not as difficult as surviving genocide in Palestine, though. That's harder, actually. It's not as difficult as surviving as a woman, though, under a patriarchy. That's harder and also unjust. It's kind of like what, the difficulty of white people trying to dismantle their unconscious racial biases and all those types of things. It's a similar thing, right? That's not harder than being a black person under white supremacy or a non-white person, right? And it's also not just to go, well, because white people get white fragile and it makes them uncomfortable to think about the massive privilege that they have. That means, oh, we have to like let them go, or brown people have to black and brown people have to like cater to the white. No, right? The global, I mean, certainly the global South and the global majority of 90% of the non-Western, non-white world, they're going, well, we're not going to sit around and wait till you figure this out. We're going to build our own path, right? And so similarly, right, this is a similar path that like, it very much echoes what we're talking about with men. It's like women and non-men. If men cannot get their act together, well, again, I know I'm echoing my point earlier, but it's important to reiterate. Women and non-men, we will build our own world, and men can be, like the U.S. and the EU, freezing, GDP plummeting, overrun with drugs and their own self-inflicted authoritarian regimes and their crises of capitalism and their doom loops and all that shit and their burning wildfires. And then they're wasting their money on their wars because they can't get it together to deal with their own corrupt, horrible leadership and build new structures in their systems. If the West cannot get their act together, the rest of the world is not going to wait for them to get their act together, right? And they will simply build a new, better world, and they will work with each other and trade with each other, right? And so women and non-men would be like, well, we're not going to wait till they get better. We will have two women living together. There are many happy women living together. It's actually the majority now, I think. It's like at least half or more, like relationships where women have children, like families together. It's women with women or women with non-men. There are women with men, but it's not actually the majority of relationships. Most men are not. They're single, right? It's like I forget the exact. It's kind of hard to get the exact statistics, but it's like 60+% of men cannot even find a date even if they want it on Tinder, right? 2/3, I think, do not have. They're not in a relationship. They don't, especially in the younger generation, it's continuing. They're not in a relationship, or they don't have a partner, in a romantic relationship, and it's like, but it's the opposite for women, and the women, obviously, right? You can't have 2/3 of the men not having relationships, and 2/3 of the women having relationships, and all those women having relationships with men, right? No. The majority and the direction is what it's going is that anyone who's continuing, right? Like there are, okay, there are not no men, right? But there are like a minority of men. That's very sad. The minority of men who have been able to adjust to this new reality. Hopefully one day it becomes a majority who have adjusted to the new reality. But the reality at this moment is that it's mostly women. And it could be women alone raising kids, women with family raising kids, women with other women raising kids again, and that is going to continue. And not only is that that's success, because like if in the same way that if the U.S. and the EU if the U.S. and the EU and Canada and Australia choose to continue down the path of their historical continued genocide, and they don't want to change that path, they deserve to keep falling apart as the rest of the world says, well, we're right. Even some European countries are starting to crack, but most of the EU is still they're not even ready to begin to acknowledge obvious genocide in Palestine. It's like Spain, Ireland, and then now a little bit of Spain, saying, hey, this whole planet has been bombarded with billions of images of genocide nonstop. Maybe like that's not even fixed. That's just acknowledging there's a problem. So similarly, right, if men want to say, well, I'm not going to acknowledge, I think that women should go back under my thumb. Every one of those men, like Europe and the US, they deserve to be isolated and alone. You know, like the U.S. number one trade, the U.S. trade, the sanctions on China, right? What U.S. is doing to China, we're gonna sanction your chips. We're gonna stop you from. We're gonna crush your industry so we can dominate this world again, right? And China's like, well, no, actually, I think China is just doing what women are doing. You know, China is doing what women are doing on the Tinder. They're going like, well, there's no fish worth eating in this fucking sea of gross men, right? And China's going, well, we don't want to. The United States they're just saying we're gonna be a dick, we're gonna be a horrible asshole, we're just gonna try to kneecap you like Tanya Harding, we're gonna cut you off from semiconductors and things, and that's, I mean, we don't like that, but you know, you want to do that, fine, we'll make our own chips, you know. And women are going, well, you know, fine, we'll make our own relationships in our own families, and that's how it's gonna be. All that you can do, if you are a man, you know, all that you can do, again, is to adjust your behavior, adjust your mindset, adjust your attitude. I know it's not gonna happen overnight, but you gotta like learn how to do that. You gotta work through that. You gotta practice. You gotta practice it. It's like, you know, it's not easy. And you know, hopefully one day you'll get through it. And you know, it's like you know, I make video games for a living, right? And it's like I can even see the people that are still buying the games. I'm like, a lot of people not necessarily changing, right? And I would love to be able to talk to more of the video game playing audience, especially the retro game playing audience. But sometimes it makes me it makes me physically ill to look at the kind of things that this group of people post. It's like, you know, I mean, I can't go into these people and be like, you have to stop being a toxic person who posts like big titty pictures of chicks all over your timeline and like, you know, says gross thing about women, and all your buddies are liking and saying, hell yeah, I want to screw that. And like, oh man, these stupid women don't know what they're missing. With me and all my buddies, all my buddies are over here, you know, we all have our 9-inch dick, and we've all got our 9-inch dick, and we've got like awesome samurai skills, like obviously, you know, like in Genshin Impact, we've got all our awesome you know headshot skills in Call of Duty. We get wasted like the Israelis if we actually were at war with Hamas, but you know these women don't know what they're missing, you know, and it's like, this makes me physically ill. I mean, I really hope, but I, you know, again, like I said, right? We can't change these people, and women are expected to adjust their lives for men. That's another thing that's social. Certainly the Western women, the Native Hawaiian women gender is not. The indigenous female gender does not take shit. Like you know, you're gonna, you know, you drop the you know, no, you're out of here. Like. Right, but the Western white women gender certainly is to, if the man becomes infantile, abusive, you have to just like adjust your expectations down, right? If your man is like just comes home drinking and doesn't talk to you, and it's just, you know, you just adjust, you just drop it down, you just go, well, you know, that's my life, and you know, we must suffer, you know, like we just like lie back and think of Mary, you know, we'll lie back and just like remember that, you know, this is our duty, is to suffer as women, you know, and then try and then you know, intervene and like, you know, intervene in the man's life to try to save that man, right? And like that's an instinct that's installed, you know. And I know, you know, I'm not a white woman, but it is, you know, it is an instinct that's installed there, right? It is to try to save. But like that, in the longer run, that's not going to help the men out of the place they're in. And I think most women are realizing that. They're like, that enabling that is not going to adjust. In fact, long-term enabling that behavior is what is allowing it to continue to exist, you know, is like enabling that, even just like the perpetual like crying, you know, this is the weaponization of incompetence was a phrase one of our non-binary fellow Native Hawaiians had recently used, and I was like, I like that phrase, weaponization of incompetence. right? It's like, I just can't do anything. I'm just bad at everything. And then it's like, and then, well, you know, can you get good? I mean, you say that you listen to gamer YouTubers say that all the time. Get good. Can you like get good at things instead of just Call of Duty? Can you like get good on things instead of just mooching off of other people? Can you get good at things instead of just weaponizing therapy speak and going, you know, like Jonah Hill and you just copy it, you just go like, oh, you're violating my boundaries by, you know, having any friends other than me who is a really terrible friend as your boyfriend, right? So, you know, and that's another thing too, which is like, you know, therapy can be helpful, but therapy itself has colonial problems within it, including make everything about the individual and denying the collective that is actually causing huge quantities of the problems. And so when men go to therapy, they tend to they can come out focusing even more on themselves, not thinking about other people, which they should, which is part of why they're lonely. And then, right, you know, they already came from a lonely little echo chamber man cave, and then the therapy goes, oh, you know, like it's like a pressure cooker. It's like you know, it's a condensing, like it's like the center of the earth creating diamonds but like the opposite. It's like it's creating diamonds of shit, where it's just like, oh, you're alone? Yeah, you really are alone. And the therapist wants to make money from you. And yeah, you know what? There's everyone else out there. It sounds like you've been really abused, and it's pushing you in, and it's making you attack everybody who could be out there. It can. If you have a super hyper individualized baby being told by a therapist, everyone else out there has hurt you and they give you all these new words, you know, you have to, you know, I'm not saying boundaries is a bad word, but they give you all these new words that are being misused against other people out there who could be helping you, or they're also then further being abused by this new person that has gone through the therapy, but has actually just been further enabled in being a selfish little shit. And so, you know, and that's unfortunate, you know, but you know, Jordan Peterson also he was a practicing mental health support person. So Jordan Peterson has been doing therapy. So that's the kind of therapy that people get sometimes. You know, you go to a Western therapist, you might just get more toxic enabling. You know, you go to a therapist, you get Jordan Peterson. You got to watch out who you go to, you know. Also, like if the therapy isn't talking about the collective and the society, and sometimes it's, you know, there are legitimate reactions, right? So there's a new word that I heard was used, was like, it's not post-traumatic stress disorder. These are justified responses to the violence, the colonial violence, right? Because Western therapy is all about individualizing and removing culpability of the capitalist, the colonialist, and the power structures, the white supremacy, etc. They take all that out, right? And they go, well, if you are feeling bad, if you're feeling anxious, it's your problem. And if anything, let's make tons of money selling you drugs. The therapy industry is a lot like the dick enlargement industry. It's about moving pills into your body for the profit of drug companies. Right? It's basically very similar. And whatever they need to say that will enable you long enough to pay them $100 and get $300 into the pocket of the pill people. They will say that. And if it comes to addressing the systems that are actually causing a lot of these problems, like the patriarchy, right? When was the last time as a man you showed up into therapy, right? And the therapist said, hey, you know, these patriarchal ideas of expecting women to be your personal emotional support slave are ridiculous, and you should grow up. Because you know how many men are going to come back to that therapist and pay them money? Right? How many bad ratings are they going to get from all the men? Right? It's the industry. There's no such thing as wellness under capitalism. But anyways, you know, it's like, when was the last time your drug dealer said, you know what, actually, this is really impure. The drugs are really impure tonight. You know, you could. I think there might be a little fentanyl thrown into this tonight. So you know, this stuff is cut with baby formula. And, you know, it's got some PCP in that. So maybe don't come back. The drug dealer is never going to tell you, hey, you know what? Don't come back because this is toxic. Because then right? They just sell you whatever they've got. But that's the unregulatable Western industries as a whole. They will never tell you what they're actually selling. but that includes mental health support, and that includes AI therapy, which apparently tells a lot of people to commit suicide, which is really terrible. So, and I'm not saying don't take that as don't go to therapy, but that is the all everything in the toxic Western colonial capitalist sick world has to be addressed and dealt with, and that includes, right? That includes that industry that ostensibly is helping men, right? And one of the evidence is Jonah Hill, who has, right, been come out as has been shown his whole ass having been enabled by his own therapist, who has been looking for more career and to become a second Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Hill has been utilizing the weaponized therapy in order to continue to abuse his own the women in his life, right? And men see that and they go, oh, that's the kind of people. See, sadly, like that's a lot of people who men end up listening to, is people like that, and they're going, oh, I should copy him. I'll just, right? They listen to Jonah going, oh, you got to set your boundaries and make sure that your girlfriend isn't triggering you, and you got to just take time for yourself. Make sure that she's giving you this space to do this and that and other thing. And it's like, but then you see how it always, right? It's always, right? The therapy is kind of like porn in that way, right? It's always just catering to what exactly you want right now and you need right now. Oftentimes, right? And like, oh yeah, you can have a good cry here and there, but then how much, it doesn't really, a lot of times it doesn't really ask you a lot. It definitely is not about addressing the systemic problems that are finally at the root. And in fact, they can enable you to attack people. I've seen this happen. It enables you to attack people who could actually help you, And so, I don't know. So that's not a conclusive. I'm not here to argue that nobody should ever go to get mental health support from a Western entity, capitalist, corporate, Western colonial entity, or from any specialist. Probably you shouldn't see Jordan Peterson though, because you know what he's gonna tell you. You have to just take charge in that relationship and demand more from that woman, and then again, he's a licensed. He is a license. He was licensed, and but that's my bigger critique for the entire Western academia and Western experts of all kinds. But I should probably wrap this up. It's already late in the day. Sorry. And so, what should I wrap up on? Just remember that you can get through it if you are, when it comes to Christmas, ask people I have even this problem, like I get scared people are going to be like, oh, Silver Spook, they're going to tell me something and I'm like, oh, maybe they don't like me. It's maybe because I'm too upfront about things, and then like they're going to be like, oh, Silver Spook is going to Silver Spook will be a bull in a china shop, or a cow in a china shop, or a non-binary bovine in a china shop, smashing up my event. So I don't want, so, it's normal for people to feel, and like, I've like felt like, oh, this is really difficult, but it's difficult for me because I'm having a tough time because a lot of people that I used to talk to, like, I'm not having as many conversations. Part of that is because, cause the way, the kind of precautions that we have deemed the best based upon our research and our thinking about things, we're much more COVID cautious. So that means we're out of certain events, right? And also because of other, just people are more back, and we don't do as many in-person things. So people are more back in the physical world. So that means there's less social things. That's been rough for me, personally. And I talked to Holly about that, that it's like, I feel like I need to socialize more, but I don't know how to get that started sometimes. Like, making friends is just hard. Sometimes you're 40 years old and you're like, how the fuck do I make new friends? I lost all my old friend groups, the friend gaming groups. Like, I don't really want to hang out with all those people because I don't even know where they are now. I don't want to engage. I don't want to start a conversation with them because it's been so long has passed since we talked. I don't want to feel. I feel like it's gonna be acknowledged that I've, like, I don't know, been bad at keeping up with them, and then they're just gonna be mad at me or something. And like those are normal. Everybody can feel those kinds of things. Men, women, non-binary people can feel those things, right? How am I gonna, how do I start new, how do I get more social engagement, like person to person? Part of it is like, I do a lot of social media stuff. I do a lot of, me broadcasting to many people stuff, but that's right. And like, I wouldn't say, I'm not like, Miley Cyrus or, I'm not freaking, I'm not Megan Thee Stallion with like, it's, I'm not saying that she has parasocial relationships, but it's not like I have like 5 million people watching, but like I do a lot of, I'm saying this thing and then you guys all see it. And then I'm not necessarily going to see what you say because number one, I don't have the time because I have 50, 60,000 followers. Number two, I don't want to hear some of the stupid crap you're going to say. And that's going to, because of my own mental state, I don't want to waste a lot of time thinking about that stupid thing that you're wrong about that I have to feel like I have to correct all day. But then that also means that like, so spending a lot of time doing that, which I have in the last couple of years, I spent so much time doing like activism work about Red Hill, right? Trying to stop, all these, colonial capitalist intrusions, Hawaiian sovereignty, Red Hill, whether it's Lahaina, whether it's, Mauna Kea, all kind of, getting education out. But that's not necessarily socializing. That's kind of like talking even now, right? That's like talking out to people. And I've been like deep in that mode. And then like, I'm like, shoot, how do I like talk directly to people to like rediscover that? So like, just in general, that's just like, that's a thing. And just, being online, socializing in a different way is different. And like learning to adjust to that is an adjustment, and so then yeah, so how am I gonna get, so if I feel like some days I feel like, oh man, I haven't had, I feel like I haven't had enough socialization this week. I'm feeling like not lonely because obviously there's Holly's around and we have other people in the household, our family's here, but like I haven't like socialized with friends and like, so I'll feel like kind of down. But I also don't, we also don't, like I try to not, sometimes I do, and that's a failure. That's a failure, right? To adjust, which is like but I try not to get upset at, and go like, Holly, you have to fix this, or, this is your fault, because obviously it isn't, if I feel like I don't have enough friends because there's so many crappy toxic men out there, and it's hard, and former friends that I have either because of fault of my own or because I don't want to be around those kinds of people anymore. I don't have those male friends, but that's not any women's fault, and that's not other people's fault around me. It's just as an example, right? Where it's like, but a lot of men want to blame women for making them lonely. And so, so reaching out, trying to get into social groups. Like we're trying to socialize more. Like, we have a few like monthly things that happen. I'm trying to put on more events and things like that. Cause a lot of times in the panel events, people, I feel more emboldened to ask people to do things. Cause I'd be like, well, this is going to be really worth your time. It's really worth your time because it's going to be this big event and people will learn, but also we'll get to talk. And like in the lead up to the thing, we'll talk more. So it's kind of like trying to organize things. And that's like, that's always a struggle, but so whether that's socializing with friends or that's socializing with, trying to find a romantic partner or whatever. I mean, all of that is still, the responsibility still lies with you, not with somebody else, and just a pro tip, when you do go to search for those other people to, be in your life, and part of this is I'm working my ass off too. So like working so hard, I gotta finish this work, so I don't have time to try to meet new people. And if I meet this new person, is this person gonna be even worth meeting? Because a lot of them aren't. I'm not saying everybody out there is worthless and not worth Silver Spook's time, but like, it's just like, when you're older and you're like, you have a family, like, cause we have a family to raise. We have a house to take care of. We have a business to run. We have the Silver Spook Cooperative, the Silver Spook Indigenous Anti-Capitalist, Anti-Imperialist Hui to run. We don't got that Zionist Israeli, US empire money flowing through our coffers because I don't do propaganda for it. I'm gonna do propaganda for the global capitalist system. So we gotta work. It means it's more work. I gotta get up. I gotta promote the games. I gotta promote the Patreon. I gotta promote all this stuff. I gotta make sure everything. So part of it is like just working. Then that when you're working, then that can make it can make it harder to connect, especially when you're older and you got kids, right? Kids become center of your life when you have them, but then later on it's like, oh yeah, maybe I need to also, but it's a thing that happens, right? But having not everybody watching this has kids necessarily, so that's like, well, even more so then, come on, you're just slacking now. You don't even have kids and you can't find anybody. You're just slacking now. I'm not saying that you have to find more friends if you don't have kids, and you're bad if you don't have like 25 friends with no kids. But like, it's still whatever it is, it's still things that you have to change and adjust to and accept. And finally, I should probably just end because it's been a long time. But that's my take on male loneliness. Maybe I'll do another one. If I get like lots of questions, if you have like how has your experience been? Leave it in the comments. I know I'm bad at these YouTube videos, but how? Please engage with this video. Put something in the comments. Just put like comment for the algorithm gods. But also like, no, but really though, if you find that is something that you are interested in, you're like, or like there's something I talked about and you're like, you want me to elaborate on that thing, feel free to drop it in the comments, because I just this is just something I've just been thinking about a lot recently for obvious reasons. But if you're like, oh, I'm in this position, what do you think about that? I mean, I'm not gonna be your self-help guru necessarily, but like, just feel free to throw it out there, because I wasn't exactly sure what all I wanted to say, but I think I said most of it. You can support us at ko-fi.com/silverspook, and you give us direct support there. You can also support us through patreon.com. And when you become a patron, you get access to the Silverspook Discord, behind the scenes on what we're working on, including Neofeud 2, the Silverspook land back. Oh shoot, I got this video that I made. I'll show it. Maybe I'll show it later. Holly actually helped direct. Holly filmed the video of the Silverspook plural crop garden that is now the restored Ahupua'a system, where we have all kind of food coming out of the garden now that used to be the lawn, and so I have some video of that. So we'll have updates on that in this Patreon update. So if you want to see that, don't forget to become a Patreon member, and you can also get access to the Silverspook Discord and the Silverspook University, 1,000 hours of my content produced, categorized according to topics. And also, you can support Native Hawaiian, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist left, landlordless, bossless organization that is the Silverspook Hui. And also, you can get Neofeud, which is on Steam and on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's on Steam for Windows. And don't forget that it is on sale in the Steam Autumn Sale. So it's on sale. You're like, what do I get? What do I get my friends for Christmas? Right? How do I not be alone as a man or a not man? And you're like, I just you don't have to go on Etsy. You can. I keep getting these Etsy commercials, but you can go on get on Steam and get everyone that a based indigenous made, handcrafted Neofeud. I mean, I'm the one person team that made this game. So, and you can get Neofeud for everybody and stick it in all of their Steam libraries, and then they will be so appreciative and learn so much about everything and be entertained, hopefully. If they're not entertained, tell them Silverspook sorry. Also, you can get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. It is on itch, and the maximum revenue does come to us when you pick this game up on itch.io. And it's also on sale there as well. There's also Decolonators, where you kick capitalist colonizer butts. So are you pissed off about what you're seeing coming out of Palestine and Gaza? Do you want to stop a genocide by fighting back, like in a video game? Well, you can in Decolonators, where you fight back against the same forces that are killing babies in Israel, in fact. It is a Start is a game where you heal the land and people, prevent erasure of your native language and culture, and stop the invaders before it is too late. and there's also Pigeon with Gun, where you play a pigeon with a gun, fighting giant robot gajillionaires and lion liberal politicians and tons of cops. And there's Woman, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is not a historical. Christmas is coming up. Perfect time to have an anti-Christmas story, an anti-Jesus story. Well, it's not anti-Jesus. It's more like it's a story from somebody who's no longer a Christian, who was raised as a woman in this Christian world, in this Western Christian world, and it is a critique of that kind of thing. This is the perfect stocking stuffer for your friends' virtual book stocking. That almost sounded bad. Your friend's virtual book stack. Get this book for your friend or your comrade or whoever you got. You can also support at SilverSpook Games. You can follow at SilverSpook Games at Octodon.social, at SilverSpook Games at Mastodon.social, on Twitter, SilverSpook Guy, and SilverSpook Guy is the personal account, and then for the games related stuff, SilverSpook Games. We also have Instagram and we have Facebook. If you want to see, well, shout out to myself. No, if you want to see me as not being a male presenting person, then you can follow SilverSpook Glams. Also, please take the proper COVID precautions and wear masks and try to distance if you possibly can. And that's why we try to take all of our pictures, as much as possible. We have as many of these kind as we can. And but you can also just see pictures of myself and also commentary, and also get fashion advice at SilverSpook Glams. And anyways, this is your competition. You see, are you a man? Now you'll have to compete with people like this. Women don't want to be with some loser. You know what I'm saying? You have to compete with this. Anyways, I'm not saying that you have to look like. I just choose to look like that. I wear more skirts and dresses than Holly. And Holly is a woman. But anyways, SilverSpook Games is on Twitter, and you can also follow Terminus C at Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar is a cyberpunk RPG in the vein of Deus Ex and System Shock. It is also a game that I'm the content director and lead writer of, and it is also a game that is you can join the Discord and follow it there. Holly is of course also on Twitter. Holly is a Sapphic/Pan. She, her, and my wife and partner here, producer and manager with the Kate Nix Twitch stream, music and variety show, and parent and caregiver of 2 Hawaiian kids here at the SilverSpook Cooperative. And also, thank you all of the Patreon patrons who continue to really help us do the work that we would not be able to do without your continued support. So thank you so much to all of our gracious continued patrons. Also, what's up, Grant? Hope Thanksgiving went okay, Grant. And thanks. I think Grant is on this list, so thank you also for being a Patreon. And thanks everybody who has been watching this whole time, listening. I hope you learned something. This is more direct SilverSpook. This is like SilverSpook Unplugged. Maybe people are too old to remember MTV Unplugged. This is like, but I hope that this has been helpful. I'm not just making this video just to be upset about things and just because I want to attack the men, but I do hope that things get better. Also, this some personal interest in that. I would like to have more people to talk to. And yeah, we'll see you later on or on the Twitch stream at 4 or 5.